You're listening to PTO Insights, a series focused on spotlighting operational insights from startups to businesses to professionals making an impact. And in this episode, we're excited to speak with Ipsheeta Furtado, CEO and founder of Tempyl Technologies. Ipsheeta
Yay.
has an incredible story of identifying areas in the market ripe for innovation and then turning that into a thriving technology-based business. So in our 15-minute discussion today, you'll hear Ipsheeta's thoughts on accomplishing her mission by securing the right kind of funding and building a team united behind her vision. So we'll discuss some of Tempyl's secrets to operational success, how they creatively assess product market fit, and key learnings any founder and entrepreneur can apply. So Ipsheeta will share her perspective on being a serial entrepreneur in the age of rapidly evolving technology and products. So let's dive into the sacredness of Ipsheeta's journey with Tempyl. Ipsheeta, how's it going?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. It's lovely to have you here today. So I
Thank you.
believe this is your third company, right?
Mm-hmm.
Making you a
Count
serial
it.
entrepreneur, startup founder. What inspired you to launch Tempyl Technologies, and when did you know it needed to be like a full-fledged project?
Yeah. So honestly, the best way to get me to do something is tell me that I can't.
Hmm.
And so yeah, I've had this idea ruminating since like 2018. I was part of Max Levchin's accelerator called HBS Labs. It was helping like many other founders get their companies off the ground. And I pitched this idea to Max, and I was like, hey, we need to do Twitch for beauty influencers. I was just like
Hmm.
recently getting off some retail therapy of my own, and I was just obsessed with the way beauty and skincare were sort of taking off in the consumer market. And so I was finding, different ways, different avenues to play around with that. It wasn't the best fit at the time for
Hmm.
many reasons, but it got the sort of brain ticking for me to think about this space a little bit more seriously, sort of um, think about where I wanted to make an impact in small business. I knew that for sure. Like as a fintech startup person, I knew small business was where I was at and where I loved to think about different solutions and come up with better ways. And so I've been egging my best friend from high school, who's been an esthetician for her career, many, many times saying, like, we should just start our own salon. We should just start our own salon. Um, and that was years of doing this until, I started to think about where could this be bigger? What could we do that's more than the sum of our parts? And so thinking about as I was like walking down the street one day, I was like, gosh, I really would love like a Starbucks experience for body care services. Like
Hmm.
know what I'm gonna go, like know what I'm gonna get, feel like I'm getting good value and trust, the product. It's so scary to like go to a provider and like not know anything about them and fingers crossed, there's no sort of like danger that you're putting your body in and that
Hmm.
feels like really vulnerable and scary. And so I really wanted to think about a solution that sort of created consistency in the market that could allow people to feel safe in a pretty vulnerable situation. Um, and so after a few years of building conviction in what is now Tempyl, we figured out that this was the right thing to do. And honestly, it wasn't like a light bulb turned or something. It was more of a slow burn for us, where we were really starting to feel like this feels like a good fit and a good business to pursue.
Nice. I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Now, you're a hybrid technology and a brick and mortar business, right? And we know
Mm-hmm.
product market fit and network development are like critical. Can you share a bit about some of your most creative avenues for finding these key tenets? Like, what can other founders borrow from your playbook?
Totally. I think there's a couple ways I think about this. When I'm thinking about strategic decisions, I'm obviously thinking about like top down and inside out. So, what's happening in the market that I can take advantage of? And what are some of the things that we have internally, like play to my strengths, that we can deliver on really comfortably? Like, we don't have to overpromise. And one of those key elements is actually my co-founder, who her career in aesthetics has been in sort of an untapped consumer market, which is in male grooming and barbering. right? And so there's this whole element of like, go where people aren't. Most salons and most like skincare service providers are like catering to an audience that knows skincare, that understands what they need, that are, exploring more complex areas like med spas. And that's like great, but not necessarily a perfect starting point because you're sort of swimming along with really big whales in the space. And so we sort of wanted to find a way to maybe like find early adopters, right? Find that beachhead of consumers that we could really work with well, but also like from a philosophical standpoint, this is again like play to our strengths. I personally don't feel comfortable going to some salons, right? I feel like it's a little bit too woo woo, or it's a little bit too like feminine in experience. And so we wanted to sort of neutralize the gendered experience that really exists in this space, which we thought was, again, another opportunity to tap into, to figure out, to play around with. Hopefully being creating, for someone who's not typically targeted and someone who may not be super familiar, we're finding a way to create a little bit more equity in the space for skincare because everybody has skin.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I love that. The blue ocean strategy approach. And there was a recent Old Spice commercial that's like, men have skin too. You saw that one?
Yeah. Yeah. They're lovely.
It's super cute. Now, there's a notion in the Valley, right? Silicon Valley, to like fail fast and like always be learning. How do you and your teams use operational processes to accelerate your idea development and launch features that can delight these customers?
Yeah. So this is really hard. It takes a lot of diligence and discipline. But this is something you and I worked on early in Tempyl's life, where we run seasons. People are probably familiar with like sprint planning, where you have like a number of sprints in succession, and you kind of have those. You have an idea of what you're going to be building in sequence. And what we do is we sort of break that down even smaller and not just dedicate it to a technology or product development team. It's like everybody on our staff, which is still very small, but everybody on our staff is doing experiments on a weekly basis. And like their main objective, because the stage of business we're in is so exploratory, is to like execute on those experiments, deliver those learnings back to the team, and then go on to the next thing. And that requires a huge amount of, like I said, discipline, but just sort of like put your ego at the door, because a lot of common behaviors in professional life is like you want to do something excellently, or you want to do something to its fullest extent. This requires us to create super, super bite-sized objectives, focus on them without any distraction for that particular week, and then move on to the next thing, regardless of the outcome. And so we do these sessions kind of on a monthly basis where we sort of plan out a theme for the season, a very specific question that all the objectives are going to answer or work towards answering, and then we just get to work. So it sort of puts aside a lot of the meeting clutter that can happen where you're like, what am I doing today? I don't know what I'm doing today. Oh, right. We have like this season theme and the season question. Like, am I actually making progress towards that particular collective understanding?
I mean, actually, one, I love that. We did work on it, and I love the vision you had for it and just the direction you went there. How are you building trust with your team? You mentioned earlier, normally professionals want to do things with excellence, and then there's some competition.
Everything.
So how
Yeah.
are you dealing with that?
I think there's an element of you got to meet people where they are. If folks are excited about excelling and sort of meeting certain outcomes, like sometimes you got to give them that taste. But there's also just early stage companies, regardless of what size or funding you have, there's this huge amount of sort of collective conviction you need to have, and no one person should be shining like the company should. And so, like we're here to make an impact on the business, and if we're here to sort of like stroke our own, professionalism, like that's cool, but maybe not not a great place for you. And so I'm very, very slow to hire. I think that's like one of the big tenets that people say is hire slow, fire fast. And it takes time to build that trust. It takes time to allow people to experience what, you know, not doing a perfect deliverable is, and what that means to us, and what sort of impact, right? Like I mentioned, we share those learnings out with the team. Like that is a critical component of doing each week's objective. If people sort of did a thing and then didn't get to necessarily share the impact of that learning with the rest of the team, they're not necessarily feeling like part of something. And I think that that's super critical, is we all get to go around and talk about what we learned. And for some people, they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so interested in that. Maybe next season I'll get to work on something in that sort of area, functional area. And so I think there's an element of we each of us have our own capacity to learn, but we're also collectively gaining a bunch of knowledge.
Nice. And given that is such a tight and streamlined operation, if you could, I mean, it seems pretty, holistic, but if you could like snap your fingers and one operational pain point just like disappears at Tempyl, what would that be?
Knowledge management is it, right? Like we spend a lot of time. I don't think it's an overt amount of time, but like quite a bit of time cataloging our learnings, right? So we're not only doing a share out, we're also writing documentation. We're doing sort of the grooming process around experiments and research. And what I'm like super paranoid and scared about is like, how do we bring that to someone new? We're not going to be the small team we are right now. We're going to grow at some point, and like that is such a grind, and it's sometimes counterintuitive where everyone's like, we got to move fast, we got to move fast. It's like, no, wait a second, we actually have to spend a day documenting things. that can feel counter momentum, and I think that is challenging to handle. And it's like you said, it's part of culture, it's part of building trust, but it's also, sometimes you just want to move on to the next thing, especially if the learning wasn't that like exciting or something, so sort of, I know it's a daily, like it's a regular grind, and people practice this really strongly with intention, but if there was like a magical solution for knowledge management, especially for onboarding new people, like, whoa, that would be amazing.
I mean, I think there are many startup founders and entrepreneurs who want the same thing.
Solving this problem. I'm so excited for it.
Yeah. Come on, Ripple. I mean, there's some companies out there.
Yeah, no, totally. There's some strong contenders. I'm excited for it.
Okay, so for any of our startup, founders or new entrepreneurs out there, what's your secret sauce? And like, how do you stay grounded in your why? You've done this 3 times now, so you kind of got a little bit of sense what's going on here.
Well, so never underestimate yourself. That's like a big one. Like I think one of my sort of motivators I mentioned at the beginning is a lot of people underestimate me, and that's an opportunity for me to figure out how I can overcome that. So that's really important to me. It's just a lot of people self-deprecate, or they feel like they don't know how, or like nobody knows what they're doing. I think that's the other like honest truth that no one gets to hear, is like no one's an expert at what they're working on, because if they were, then it wouldn't be that interesting. So I think that's super important. And my last final sort of, maybe because of the stage I'm in, where I've been in a discipline and area of focus for so many years, is like, if you're going to start a company, don't pick what's trending. Fintech has had a lot of ups and downs since I've been in it. Some waves, and I think it was cool to not have to be part of the wave and to just watch it sometimes. And I think when starting a long-term business that you don't sort of just kind of flip the next day, it's really important to like it versus know that everybody else likes it. Yeah.
I mean, I want to ask for parting words, but you're kind of exposing something right now. We're in the age of AI, right? It's like, what the advice would you give to someone, like, with that said, knowing what's going on right now?
Well, I think the beauty of technology businesses is that the technology can be applied to any sort of vertical experience. And I say that because like we're past the large platforms for everyone phase of technology companies. We're still in the vertical space. Like if you find an application for AI that like speaks to you and that you can think about when you're sleeping and in the shower, like that's the idea you should be pursuing, not like the one that investors or your friends are saying is like the most, the one that's raising the most money. Like that is definitely a recipe for disaster. And so like really, I think it's a lot of introspection. It's a lot of like thinking about being really conscious of what you think about all day, because that's what oftentimes companies turn into. So,
Man, I love that. Any parting words, Sheeta?
oh, I do have parting words. I have parting words. Um, they're very straightforward. Go see a theater performance, please. Now, thank you.
Oh, I love that. We love theater together. Although maybe I'm a little more Main Street pop theater.
Hey, any theater, any arts is beautiful, and I think it needs our patronage.
I love that. That's wonderful. So that concludes our insightful conversation. Thank you, Ipsheeta. She is the CEO and founder of Tempyl Technologies. She's given us an inside look on her passion for aesthetics and the future forward venture. So she showed us her keys to funding your vision, how to identify product market fit, leveraging your operations, and actually your team culture for growth. And she inspires entrepreneurs to find the right partners while exploring a new space and a niche that they care about. Your vision, your tenacity, your journeys, at your grit, your innovation, the things you've accomplished. Thank you so much for sharing this with us today. And I hope you all will see us next time on PTO Insights. So, bye.